The arid garden. This little blue succulent will be overwintered in frost-free conditions. This will be dug up and just kept in the soil that it's been grown in and kept very dry over winter, be given one water first and then left to go dry for the next few weeks before winter starts, and then kept above 5 degrees Celsius. Some cacti are completely winter hardy, including this little Opuntia. It's been in the ground for a couple of years, survived -10, frozen for weeks and weeks on end, wet freezers as well, done no damage to it whatsoever. It's grown from a little stalk at the bottom to a much bigger plant over the last 2 or 3 years. House leeks or sempervariums, they need no winter protection whatsoever. They can be left in the ground and they'll be fine whatever the winter throws at it. This Echeveria rosette forming succulent, beautiful purple colour on this cultivar is, well, it can take some frost. You could perhaps leave it in situ all year round with a plastic perspex shelter over the top to keep the worst of the weather off. As long as it's kept really, really dry, it should be okay, down to perhaps -5 or so. Perhaps even lower than that, but I'm going to dig this up and keep it frost-free all winter. The blue form, glauca, that is a little bit more hardy, down to probably -8, -10 at best if kept completely dry, so if it has a shelter over the top of it, or if you've kept it potted and in completely dry atmosphere, so there's no rain going down here and rotting it off at the base, then it will be fine. If not, on the safe side, you could dig this up, bring it into frost-free conditions once more. This small proper cacti is winter hardy, will survive outside down to at least probably -10. Not tested it any lower than that because my lowest was -10 last year. Survived outside completely fine. It does benefit from having a rain shelter over the top, so half a Coke bottle over the top, or some perspex, or maybe a little fleece structure over the top to keep the water out. Doesn't want to be completely enclosed because it will sweat if it gets hot in the day in sort of late autumn or early winter, so perhaps just doing the worst of the weather. Doesn't mind being a bit wet, so I would say just put the shelter over the top of this for the worst snowy periods and the harshest frosts, especially if it's got periods of rain in the middle of that, which can cause the damage. Other than that, you could just leave it outside like this and it should be fine in most situations, as long as you've grown it in a really gritty mix. Now this columnar cacti is not at all hardy. It will be dug up very soon before it gets any slight hint of a frost, because it's very prone to rotting off. Even if kept inside in winter, if you water it too much, it will rot off. This will be dug up and potted up into a very free draining mix of grit, perlite and some dunins, and that will just be kept very dry over winter. Small bit of water every now and then, but nothing more than that. Rather keep it stressed and dry than overwatered and prone to rot. Now this fella is a pup of the main plant that rotted off after last year's harsh winter. The year before last it did survive -8 with no problem whatsoever. So they can cope with at least -10, I would say, but ideally with a shelter over the top. The thing that killed this was the snow and the ice freezing in the crown for weeks and then thawing out and freezing again, eventually allowing the rock to penetrate the centre of the plant. But these pups survived that, no problem, and they're growing away nicely now. This winter this will be kept in the ground, but I will put a shelter over the top of this come sort of early November. It can, obviously, if it gets down to -10, it can deal with the frost, but not being too wet and frozen through. So keep this dry and it should be fine to -10. Yucca gloriosa variegata, or Spanish dagger, named after the vicious points at the end of the leaves. Needs no protection whatsoever in a UK climate. Easily survives -10. I'm sure it'll get down to -15 or lower without any problems. Doesn't mind the wet, doesn't mind the cold, no protection needed. It's a great plant for the garden, wouldn't be without it. Agave Mediopicta alba, a stunning plant, beautiful white and greyish blue leaves. Again, this will take a few degrees of frost, but to be honest, why chance it? Bring this indoors, frost free over winter, and then I've got no chance of losing this plant. Water it when needed over winter, shouldn't need much at all. I wouldn't suggest leaving this out unless in the very mild southwest climate, and even then I would put a rain shelter over the top of it so it doesn't get any moisture in the crown, which will cause rot. Sometimes you'll find that with a few degrees of frost it will start showing black blemishes on the leaves which can spread, so these should be cut off. But ideally keep this totally frost free and bring it in over winter. Aeoniums, beautiful plants from the Canary Islands. Can't really take any frost at all, so should be brought in before any frost. Perhaps get down to 0 with a very light frost, but start looking bad if you leave it out with many frosty nights. So the best thing to do is dig up the plants, bring it indoors, and it does need some water in this over winter. Don't let it completely go bone dry for too long, because it will start suffering. It's quite hard to kill these if it's frost free, as long as they have a little bit of water. Let it dry out completely between waterings, but make sure you do water it and check it regularly throughout winter, because they do like a drink, and they show their appreciation by keeping these nice rosettes firm. If you don't water it enough, all the leaves start dying off too much and start going floppy. Beautiful plant, can easily be propagated. All you have to do, snap that off, stick that into some soil and it'll start growing, no problems. Now this spiky feather, which is almost 2 foot tall, beautiful spiky leaves, will possibly be okay in most winters outdoors in the UK without any protection whatsoever. But as it's been pretty harsh the last few winters, I'd definitely, if you put it in the ground, definitely put a perspex cover over the top, just keep the rain off more than anything. And if you've got it in a pot, bring it indoors, which I'll be doing. I'll be dragged into the garage where it'll remain pretty much frost free. May get a low of -4 or 5 in the garage, but that shouldn't cause any problems whatsoever. Should take about -8, possibly -10 outdoors. But if it's very wet, very frosty, then it can rot off in the centre, which obviously you don't want with a beautiful plant like this. It's definitely worth protecting. Now this little aeonium has been potted up into a mix of perlite, multi-purpose compost and grit, so it's free draining, but the compost just helps it keep a bit of moisture, which the aeoniums do seem to enjoy. So this will be just left in the greenhouse over winter. We kept an eye on, make sure that no slugs have a go at it, because slugs do seem to like to eat the leaves, and make sure that it just have enough water to keep alive. Now with the spikies like this Polymerabilis, again it's in a very gritty mix. This will be kept indoors over winter. If it's a lot bigger plant you might want to leave it outside with some protection, but as it's not completely hardy at all, I would try to keep it indoors, either in a greenhouse, garage or some shelter. This has got a lot more grit in it and less compost, and it seems to be liking those conditions. Aloe polyphylla, beautiful little aloe, It's said to be quite hardy, down to I think -8 or lower, so probably the hardest aloe you can grow in the UK. It likes to have some moisture in it, but it likes to be free draining as well, so there's multi-purpose compost, John Innings, lots of grit and perlite in this mix, so it just hold on to some moisture, but it does drain through very quickly through the bottom as well. So you may want to try this outdoors if you've got a much bigger plant than this. I would suggest if you've got a small plant like this, you definitely keep it indoors, because you wouldn't want to lose it. It's got less bulk, it's less likely to survive a winter outdoors. -10, -8 or -10 maybe as a much bigger plant, but at this size I wouldn't chance it at all.